You ever see a man dig his own grave with a badge and a tow hook? It happens faster than you think. Officer Buck Miller thought he was the king of the pavement that Tuesday afternoon. He saw a black man in a tailored suit, leaning against a pristine, blacked-out SUV, and decided he was going to ruin his day. He didn't check the plates. He didn't listen to the warnings. And he definitely didn't know that the car he was about to tow wasn't just a car. It was a federal trap. And he was the rat walking right into the cage. By the time the truth came out, it wasn't just his job on the line. It was his freedom. Buckle up. This is the story of how arrogance met the highest level of clearance. The heat coming off the asphalt in downtown Chicago was enough to warp the air. But Raymond Sterling didn't seem to sweat. He stood on the corner of Wacker and Clark, checking his watch, a heavy, silver timepiece that cost more than most people's first car. Raymond was a man who understood the value of time, and right now, he was early. He adjusted the cuffs of his navy suit, his eyes scanning the reflection in the window of the coffee shop behind him, parked directly in front of him, in a spot clearly marked for loading, but currently empty of any delivery trucks. Was his vehicle a 2025 Chevy Tahoe, obsidian black, with tint so dark it looked like a void cut into the cityscape. It was a beast of a machine. To the untrained eye, it was just an expensive SUV belonging to a corporate executive or maybe a high-end private driver. To the trained eye, the slightly thicker glass and the extra antennas on the roof whispered a different story. Officer Buck Miller didn't have a trained eye. Buck was a 5-year veteran of the force who still acted like a rookie with something to prove. He was patrolling alone that day, his cruiser crawling down the street like a shark smelling blood. He spotted the Tahoe immediately. More specifically, he spotted Raymond. Buck slowed his cruiser, the tires crunching against the curb as he pulled up behind the SUV. He didn't run the plates. He didn't call it in. He just saw a tall black man in a sharp suit standing next to a car that looked too nice, parked in a zone that was technically restricted between 8 o'clock a.m. and 10 o'clock a.m. It was 10:05 a.m. Technically, Raymond was legal. But Buck wasn't interested in technicalities. He was interested in dominance. Buck stepped out of the cruiser, hitching up his belt. He was a stocky man with a buzz cut and a face that naturally rested in a sneer. He walked toward Raymond, his hand resting casually near his holster, a subtle intimidation tactic he'd perfected. "This your vehicle?" Buck barked, skipping the greeting. Raymond looked up from his phone. His expression was unreadable, calm, almost bored. "It is, officer. Is there a problem?" "Loading zone," Buck said, pointing to the sign. "You load in anything, or are you just loitering?" Raymond glanced at the sign, then back at Buck. "The sign says the restriction ends at 10 a.m. It's 10:06. Buck's eyes narrowed. He hated being corrected, especially by guys who looked like Raymond. "Don't get smart with me. I've been watching this car for 10 minutes. You were parked here before 10. That was a lie. Buck had just turned the corner 30 seconds ago. "I pulled in at 10:01, Raymond said, his voice smooth, deep, and devoid of fear. "Check the dashcam footage on your cruiser if you're unsure." Buck stepped closer, invading Raymond's personal space. "I don't need to check anything. I'm telling you, you're illegally parked. And now that I'm close..." Buck sniffed the air theatrically. "I smell marijuana." Raymond's eyebrows raised a fraction of an inch. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Buck said, a nasty grin spreading across his face. odor of narcotics coming from the vehicle. That gives me probable cause to search it. Step away from the car, hands where I can see them. Raymond didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just stared at Buck with an intensity that would have made a smarter man back down. "Officer," Raymond said, his voice dropping an octave, "I'm going to ask you to think very carefully about your next move. There are no narcotics in this vehicle. I am parked legally. If you escalate this, you are going to regret it." "Is that a threat?" Buck snapped, his hand tightening on his radio. "Dispatch. This is Unit 4 Alpha. I've got a non-compliant subject at Wacker and Clark, requesting backup and a tow truck immediately. Subject is refusing lawful orders." Raymond sighed, a long, weary exhale. He reached into his jacket pocket. "Don't move," Buck yelled, his hand flying to his taser. "I'm reaching for my identification," Raymond said slowly. "I'm going to show you who I am, and then you're going to get back in your car and drive away." "I don't care who you are," Buck spat. "You're just another guy breaking the law. Keep your hands out of your pockets." Buck was already writing the ticket in his head. Impound the car. Arrest the guy for resisting or obstruction. Maybe sprinkle a little disorderly conduct on top. It was going to be a good stats day. He had no idea that the identification Raymond was reaching for wasn't a driver's license. It was a leather wallet containing a gold badge and a Department of Homeland Security credential that listed his clearance level as top secret/SCI. But Buck wouldn't let him show it. The backup arrived within minutes. 2 more cruisers screeched to a halt, lights flashing, creating a scene that stopped pedestrians in their tracks. Tourists pulled out their phones. A small crowd began to form. Out of the first backup car stepped Officer Liam O'Connor, a younger guy who looked nervous, and Sergeant Patricia Haynes. Haynes was older, tired, and generally just wanted to get through her shift without paperwork. "What's the situation, Miller?" Haynes asked, eyeing Raymond, who was now standing with his hands clasped behind his back, looking like a statue of disapproval. "Illegal parking, loading zone violation," Buck lied smoothly. "Subject became aggressive when I asked him to move. Then I caught a whiff of weed. He refused to let me search the vehicle." Haynes looked at Raymond. She saw the suit. She saw the car. She saw the demeanor. Her gut told her something was off. "Sir," she said, addressing Raymond, "is this your vehicle?" "It is assigned to me, yes," Raymond said. "Assigned." Haynes caught the word. "Is it a rental?" "It's a government vehicle," Raymond stated clearly. "I was attempting to show Officer Miller my credentials before he threatened me with a taser." Buck laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Yeah, right. A government vehicle with 20-inch rims and tint like that. Who do you work for? The Department of Drug Dealing?" The crowd chuckled nervously. "I am a senior field agent with the Department of Homeland Security," Raymond said, his eyes locking onto Haynes. "And this vehicle is equipped with sensitive surveillance electronics. If you tow it, you will be violating federal statutes regarding the interference of an active investigation." Haynes paused. She looked at the car again. She looked at the plate. It was an Illinois plate, but something about the sequence, IL88 2-QQ9, rang a bell. It was a blind plate, used for undercover ops. "Miller," Haynes said quietly. "Did you run the tag? System's down on my laptop." Buck lied again. He just hadn't bothered. "Look, Sarge, he's bluffing. Look at him. He's just trying to scare us off. I already called the tow. Stan's towing is 2 blocks away. They're here." Sure enough, A rumbling flatbed truck with Stan's towing and recovery painted on the side was backing into position. The driver, a large man named Big Stan himself, hopped out, chains clanking in his hands. "Hook her up," Buck yelled, waving Stan over. "Wait," Raymond said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise of the traffic. "Sergeant Haynes, I am giving you a lawful order as a federal agent. Do not touch this vehicle. Inside the trunk is a mobile server connected to the Chicago field office. If that car is tilted at a steep angle without powering down the sequence, it triggers a remote wipe protocol. You will destroy 3 years of gathered evidence on a RICO case involving the Latin kings." Haynes went pale. "Miller, hold on. He's lying!" Buck shouted, his face turning red. He felt his authority slipping, and he couldn't handle it. "He's stalling a remote wipe protocol." "Listen to this sci-fi crap. Stan, hook it up. I'm authorizing the impound. Code 44, seizure of vehicle used in narcotics transport. I don't smell any weed. Buck." O'Connor, the rookie, whispered. "That's because the wind shifted." Buck snapped. "Stan, do it!" Stan looked between the angry cop and the calm man in the suit. "Look, officer, if he says it's a Fed car..." "Do you want to lose your city contract?" Stan Buck threatened. "I said tow it." Stan shrugged. "You're the boss." He knelt down and slid the hooks under the Tahoe's front axle. Raymond took a step forward, and 3 hands went to their holsters. He stopped. He looked directly at Buck. "Officer Miller," Raymond said, "you have just made the last mistake of your career. I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to let you do this. But I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I gave you a chance." Buck sneered. "Tell it to the judge." The hydraulics whined. The front of the black SUV lifted into the air. Raymond watched impassively as the vehicle was dragged up onto the flatbed. He heard the distinct crunch of the front bumper scraping the metal ramp the suspension was lowered for stability, and Stan hadn't used the proper blocks. That sound, Raymond noted dryly, was about $5,000 of damage to a custom-reinforced chassis. "Add it to your bill." Buck laughed. He pulled out his ticket book and ripped off a citation. He tried to shove it into Raymond's chest pocket, but Raymond stepped back. The paper fluttered to the ground. "You're under arrest," Buck announced. "Disorderly conduct and resisting." "Am I?" Raymond asked. He nodded toward the street corner. "Because I think you might be the one in trouble." Buck spun around. Pulling up to the curb wasn't another police cruiser. It was a convoy, 3 black Suburbans, identical to the one currently sitting on the tow truck. Swerved into the intersection, boxing in the tow truck and the police cars. Blue and red lights hidden inside the grills and windshields erupted, blindingly bright. Men in tactical gear poured out of the Suburbans. They didn't have ticket books. They had carbines. The letters on their vests didn't say police. They said federal agent and DHS. And stepping out of the lead vehicle was a woman Raymond knew very well. Assistant Special Agent in Charge, ASAC Eleanor Vance. She looked furious. Buck's mouth fell open. The blood drained from his face so fast it nearly made him dizzy. Raymond brushed a speck of dust off his lapel. "Right on time," he whispered. The intersection of Wacker and Clark had transformed from a routine traffic stop into what looked like a scene from an action movie. The sudden arrival of the DHS convoy had frozen time. Pedestrians who had been filming on their phones were now backing away, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. The air wasn't just tense, it was vibrating with the sort of heavy, dangerous authority that makes regular police work look like crossing guard duty. Officer Buck Miller stood rooted to the spot, his hand hovering near his taser, his mouth agape. He watched as 6 tactical agents formed a loose perimeter around the scene. They didn't point their rifles at the police officers that would be an act of war, but they held them at the low ready, their posture screaming that they were not to be trifled with. The woman who had stepped out of the lead Suburban, Assistant Special Agent in Charge A.S.A.C. Harper, marched toward the group. She was in her late 40s, wearing a charcoal pantsuit that cost more than Buck made in a month, and her eyes were hidden behind aviator sunglasses. She moved with the precision of a heat-seeking missile. "Secure that vehicle," Harper commanded, pointing a manicured finger at the Tahoe sitting crookedly on the flatbed. 2 agents immediately moved toward Stan's tow truck. "Hey, Buck," found his voice. It cracked slightly. "Hey, step back. That is a crime scene. That vehicle is impounded under the authority of the Chicago Police Department." Harper didn't even look at him. She walked straight up to Sergeant Haynes. Haynes, to her credit, had already holstered her weapon and raised her hands to chest level, palms out the universal sign of, "I am not the problem here." "I'm A.S.A.C. Harper, Homeland Security, Chicago Field Office," she said, her voice ice cold. "Who is the ranking officer here?" "I am, ma'am," Haynes said, her voice steady but tight. "Sergeant Patricia Haynes." "Sergeant Haynes," Harper said, lowering her sunglasses to reveal eyes that looked like they could cut glass. "Why is my senior field agent being detained? And why is a Class A federal surveillance asset currently being mangled on the back of a flatbed truck?" Buck stepped in front of Haynes, puffing out his chest. "I'm the arresting officer, Officer Miller. And that man," he pointed an accusing finger at Raymond, "was parked illegally, refused lawful orders, and the vehicle smells like narcotics. I don't care who you are, lady. You can't just swarm a crime scene." Harper slowly turned her head to look at Buck. It was like watching a lioness acknowledge a buzzing fly. "Officer Miller," she said. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. "Do you have any idea what you have just done?" "I enforced the law," Buck said, though his confidence was wavering under her stare. "I have probable cause. I smell weed." "Weed," Harper repeated flatly. She turned to one of the tactical agents. "Agent Kowalski, bring the K9. A German shepherd wearing a vest marked DHS was brought forward from the 2nd Suburban. "Run the car," Harper ordered. "You can't do that," Buck shouted. "That's my collar. I haven't processed it yet. You are currently impeding a federal operation involving national security," Harper said. "If you say another word before I finish speaking, I will have you detained for obstruction of justice. Do you understand?" Buck opened his mouth, but Sergeant Haynes grabbed his arm. "Hard! Shut up, Miller!" she hissed. "That's an order." The dog circled the Tahoe on the flatbed. It sniffed the wheels, the doors, the trunk. It sat down and looked at its handler, wagging its tail. It did not bark. It did not scratch. It did not alert. "The dog is a master-rated narcotics detection, K9. Harper said. "He finds nothing, no marijuana, no residue, which means, Officer Miller, that your probable cause was a fabrication." "The wind," Buck stammered. "The wind must have—" "There is no wind." Raymond spoke up. He was still standing where he had been, untouched by the chaos. "And I don't smoke. I take drug tests monthly for my clearance." Harper turned back to Raymond. "Agent Sterling, are you injured?" "No, ma'am," Raymond said. "However, the vehicle has sustained damage to the front undercarriage. I heard the sensor array scrape. We likely lost the uplink to the server." Harper's face darkened. She looked at Stan, the tow truck driver, who was currently trying to make himself as small as possible inside the cab of his truck. "Get that vehicle down," Harper ordered, gently. "If you scratch it again, I will seize your truck as evidence in a destruction of government property case." Stan scrambled out of the cab so fast he nearly tripped. "Yes, ma'am." "Right away I didn't know. I swear he told me to tow it." Stan pointed a trembling finger at Buck. As the Tahoe was lowered back to the street, the sound of screeching tires signaled the arrival of yet more cars. This time, it was a white CPD command shirt vehicle. "Oh, thank God," Buck whispered. The captain. Captain Reed was a legend in the precinct, a fair man, but one who backed his officers. Buck felt a surge of relief. The feds might have the gear, but this was still Chicago. Reed wouldn't let them push his guys around. Captain Reed slammed his car door and stormed over. He was a large man with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been chiseled out of granite. He ignored the DHS agents and walked straight to Buck and Haynes. "Report!" Reed barked. "Captain!" Buck started, his voice gaining strength. "These feds swarmed us. I made a lawful stop on this guy." He pointed at Raymond, "for a loading zone violation. I smelled narcotics. I ordered a tow. Then this." Circus arrived and started threatening me. Reed looked at Buck. Then he looked at the Tahoe. Then he looked at Raymond. Finally, he looked at ASAC Harper. Reed's face didn't show anger at the feds. It showed recognition. "Harper," Reed said, surprised. "Hello, David," Harper said. Her tone wasn't friendly, but it was familiar. "It's been a while." Buck blinked. You know her. Cap. We worked a joint task force in 09. Reed said absently. He turned his eyes back to Buck. The look in them made Buck's blood run cold. It wasn't support. It was pure, unadulterated fury. "Miller," Reed said, his voice dangerously low. "Did you verify the plate?" "System was down." "Cap." Buck lied. "The system isn't down," Reed shouted, the sudden volume making everyone jump. "I just ran a plate on my way here. The system is fine. Did you run the plate?" Buck swallowed hard. "No, sir." "And did you check the signage?" Reed gestured to the sign. "It says restriction ends at 10 a.m. Dispatch logs show you called this in at 10:06. "He was there before," Buck insisted. "I saw him and the weed." Reed asked, "Where's the weed?" "Miller, because I know Agent Sterling. I know him well. We've had lunch. The man is a choir boy." Buck felt the walls closing in. I smelled it. Maybe it was a passer-by." Reed stepped closer, practically nose to nose with Buck. "You called a tow on a federal vehicle, on a bullshit parking violation, fabricated probable cause to search it, and now you've involved me in an interagency incident." "Captain." He was resisting. Buck pleaded. "He wouldn't show ID. I tried." Raymond interjected calmly. "I reached for my credentials. Officer Miller put his hand on his taser and told me if I moved, he'd drop me." Reed closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Miller, give me your badge." The silence on the street was deafening. "Sir," Buck whispered. "Badge. Gun. Now," Reed ordered. "You're relieved of duty, pending an internal investigation. Get in the back of Sergeant Haynes's car." "You can't do this!" Buck screamed, panic finally taking over. "I'm a good cop. I was doing my job. This guy, he thinks he's better than us, just because he drives a fancy car. He's the one who should be arrested." "That is enough," Reed roared. But the drama wasn't over. As Buck clumsily tried to unclip his badge with shaking hands, Raymond walked over to the Tahoe, which was now back on its 4 wheels. He opened the passenger door and pulled out a laptop. "Captain Reed," Raymond said, "before you take Officer Miller away, there is something you need to see, and something he needs to see." The group gathered around the hood of the Tahoe. Raymond set the tough book laptop on the warm metal. The screen was split into 4 quadrants feeds from the cameras embedded in the SUV's perimeter. "This vehicle," Raymond explained, his voice projecting so the gathered crowd could hear, "is equipped with a 360-degree, always-on surveillance suite. It records audio and video in 4K resolution, stored locally and uploaded to the cloud in real time." Buck, stripped of his gun and badge, stood by Sergeant Haynes, watching the screen with a look of dread. Raymond tapped a few keys. "Here is 10:00 a.m. The video showed the empty street. At 10:01 a.m., the black Tahoe pulled smoothly into the spot. Raymond stepped out, checked the sign, checked his watch, and leaned against the car. "Legal parking," Harper noted. "Clear as day." Raymond fast-forwarded. "Here is 10:05 a.m. Officer Miller's cruiser arrives." The audio was crisp. They heard the crunch of tires. They saw Buck get out. They heard the first words out of his mouth. "This your vehicle? No good morning. No Officer Miller. CPD. Just aggression." They watched the entire interaction play out. They watched Buck lie about the time. They heard him explicitly say, "I don't need to check anything." Then came the kicker. The camera angle from the side mirror captured Buck's face perfectly when he claimed to smell marijuana. He looked around, sniffed theatrically, and smirked. It was a performance. It was undeniable proof of fabrication. "I smell marijuana. That gives me probable cause." "Jesus," Sergeant Haynes muttered, looking away in embarrassment. "Miller, you idiot!" But the video kept playing. It reached the point where Raymond reached for his ID. "I'm reaching for my identification," Raymond said on the video. "Don't move," Buck yelled, hand on his weapon. Captain Reed watched the screen with a jaw so tight a muscle twitched in his cheek. This wasn't just bad policing. It was a civil rights lawsuit, wrapped in a bow and handed to the city on a silver platter. "But here is the part that concerns me the most," Raymond said. He forwarded to the moment the tow truck arrived. On screen, Raymond was warning them about the server. "If that car is tilted, it triggers a remote wipe protocol." Buck's voice cut through the speaker. "He's lying. Listen to this sci-fi crap. Stan, hook it up." Raymond paused the video. He turned to Harper. The server wipe initiated the moment the angle exceeded 15 degrees. "We received a notification at headquarters, which is why the team deployed." "What was on the server, Agent Sterling?" Captain Reed asked, dreading the answer. "We've been tracking a shipment of illegal firearms moving through the port," Raymond said. 3 months of wiretaps, GPS coordinates of the stash houses, the identities of the buyers. It was all cached on the local drive for transfer to the secure facility today. Raymond looked at Buck. "The wipe protocol is designed to prevent data from falling into enemy hands if the vehicle is hijacked or stolen. It deletes everything and overwrites the drive 7 times. "Is it recoverable?" Reed asked. "No," Harper answered. "That's the point of the protocol, David. It's military-grade sanitation." The gravity of the situation settled on Buck's shoulders like a lead blanket. He hadn't just towed a car. He hadn't just harassed a black man. He had single-handedly destroyed a federal case against a major arms-dealing ring. "So," Harper said, turning to Reed, "not only do we have unlawful detention, filing a false police report, and civil rights violations. We have destruction of government property and obstruction of a federal investigation." Reed looked at Buck with pure disgust. "Miller, you are going to be lucky if you don't end up in a cell next to the guys you used to arrest." Buck looked around. The crowd of pedestrians had grown. They were all filming. He saw the DHS agents. He saw his captain. He saw Raymond, the man he thought was an easy target, looking back at him with pity. I didn't know," Buck whispered. "Ignorance of the law is not an excuse," Raymond said, quoting the very line Buck had used on teenagers 100 times. "Isn't that what you tell people? Get him out of here." Reed ordered Haynes, "Book him. I'll call the DA myself." As Haynes shoved a handcuffed Buck into the back of the cruiser, head pushed down to avoid hitting the frame. A courtesy Buck had rarely shown others, Raymond approached the tow truck driver. Stan was sweating profusely. "Officer, agent. Look, I just do what CPD tells me. I got a contract." "Stan, is it?" Raymond asked. "Yes, sir. Stan Kowalski. No relation to him." He pointed at the DHS agent. "Stan, I'm going to need your insurance information," Raymond said pleasantly. "The sensor array you scraped costs $42,000 to replace, and the labor to reinstall it is another 10. Stan's face went white. 50 grand. "My liability limit is—" "I suggest you call your provider," Raymond said, "and maybe reconsider which officers you take orders from in the future." Raymond walked back to Harper and Reed. The tow truck was leaving, followed by the cruiser carrying a disgraced Buck Miller. The show was over, but the fallout was just beginning. "I'm sorry about the data, Harper," Reed said, offering his hand. "Truly. The city will cooperate fully." Harper shook his hand. "I know you will. David, but the data isn't gone." Reed blinked. "What?" Raymond smiled, a genuine small smile. "The wipe protocol. Yeah. I disabled it at 9:55 a.m. before I got out of the car." Raymond said, "I knew I was parking in a high-risk zone for overzealous meter maids. I didn't want to risk a glitch." Reed stared at him. You bluffed him." "I told him it would wipe," Raymond corrected. "I didn't say it did wipe. I wanted to see how far he would go. I wanted to see if he would destroy evidence just to satisfy his ego." "And he did," Harper said. "Hook, line, and sinker." Reed let out a long, incredulous laugh. "You son of a gun. You let him dig his own grave." He brought the shovel. "Captain," Raymond said, "I just showed him where the dirt was." "Well," Reed said, looking at the retreating police cruiser, "he's buried now. But this isn't over. The Union is going to fight this. They always do. Buck Miller is a cockroach. He's hard to kill." "That's fine," Harper said, putting her sunglasses back on. "Because now, we're not just coming for his job. We're coming for his pension, and we're going to make it public." The video hit the internet like a tactical nuke. By 6:00 p.m. that evening, #WackerDrive. Checkmate was trending #1 on X, formerly Twitter and TikTok. The footage Raymond had compiled the crystal-clear 4K video showing Buck Miller lying about the time, the phantom marijuana smell, and the smug order to tow a federal surveillance vehicle was being dissected by millions. But in the living room of his modest bungalow in the Norwood Park neighborhood, Buck Miller wasn't watching the internet. He was drinking a beer and listening to the one man who told him he was still a hero. "Don't sweat the small stuff, Buck," said Vince Donahue, the union representative for the Fraternal Order of Police. Vince was a man shaped like a beer keg, with a flushed face and a suit that looked like he had slept in it. This is just noise. The internet hates cops. It's what they do. We'll weather it." Buck took a long pull from his bottle. "Captain Reed took my badge. Vince, in front of everyone. In front of those feds." "Reed is a politician," Vince scoffed. "He's scared of the optics. He had to put on a show. But look at the facts. You made a judgment call. You suspected narcotics. Just because the dog didn't hit doesn't mean the smell wasn't there earlier. Maybe the guy smoked outside the car. Maybe the wind carried it from a pedestrian. It's subjective. Buck. Subjective. That's the magic word." "But the tow," Buck muttered. "The federal car. Honest mistake." Vince waved a hand dismissively. The car had no government plates. It had civilian tags. Illegal tint. You were doing your job enforcing city ordinances. If the feds want to drive around in Batmobiles pretending to be drug dealers, they can't cry when a beat cop pulls them over. We're going to spin this. Spin it how? "We hired Richard Hayes," Vince said, dropping the name like it was a grenade. Buck's eyes widened. "Richard the Shark." Hayes was the most aggressive defense attorney in Chicago. He didn't just defend cops, he destroyed their accusers. "Hayes is going to paint this Raymond Sterling guy as an elitist," Vince explained, leaning forward. "A deep state bureaucrat who thinks he's above the law. We'll say he baited you. We'll say he parked there on purpose to provoke a reaction for his little surveillance test. We'll make you the victim of a federal entrapment scheme. The public loves an underdog." The next morning, the strategy went live. Richard Hayes appeared on a popular morning talk show. He was smooth, tanned, and wore a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Officer Miller is a decorated veteran of the force," Hayes told the host. "He patrols a tough beat. He saw a suspicious vehicle with illegal modifications. When he investigated, he was met with arrogance and obstruction. Mr. Sterling refused to identify himself. He refused to cooperate. He escalated the situation. And now, the Department of Homeland Security wants to ruin a working-class man's career because he dared to ticket their precious SUV. It's a disgrace." The narrative began to shift. Comments on the video started to change. "Why didn't the guy just show his ID? Seems like a trap to me. Cops have a hard job. Give him a break." Raymond sat in his office at the DHS headquarters, watching the interview on a wall-mounted monitor. His office was sparse, a glass desk, a secure terminal, and a view of the Chicago skyline. ASAC. Harper walked in, holding 2 cups of black coffee. She handed one to Raymond. "You see this?" Raymond asked, gesturing to the screen where Hayes was now questioning Raymond's patriotism. "I see it," Harper said, her voice tight. "They're good. Dirty, but good. They're trying to make this about compliance instead of constitutional rights. They're betting that if they throw enough mud at you, people will forget that Miller lied about the weed." Raymond took a sip of the coffee. "They're not just defending him, Harper. They're doubling down. They're saying he did nothing wrong. They're saying that lying about probable cause is just subjective police work." "The hearing is set for next Tuesday," Harper said. "Internal Affairs is recommending termination. But with Hayes involved, they might just get him a suspension, a slap on the wrist. He'll be back on the street in 6 months, doing the exact same thing to someone else." Raymond stood up and walked to the window. He looked down at the tiny cars moving along the streets below. He thought about all the people who drove those cars, people who didn't have federal badges, People who couldn't call a tactical team when a bully with a badge decided to ruin their day. "He's done this before," Raymond said quietly. "What, Miller?" Raymond turned around. "You don't get that comfortable lying unless you've practiced." The way he said, "I smell marijuana," it was a script. It was muscle memory. He's used that line 100 times to bypass the Fourth Amendment. Harper nodded slowly. "You think there's a pattern?" "I know there is," Raymond said. "And if we want to bury him, really bury him, so he never carries a gun again, we need to prove it. We can't just win this case. We need to dismantle his entire career." Harper smiled, a sharp, dangerous expression. "I'll get the analysts. You get the coffee. We're going digging." The DHS database is a terrifying thing. It connects dots that most people don't even know exist. Raymond and Harper weren't just looking at police reports. They were looking at the raw data of Officer Buck Miller's 5-year career. They pulled every arrest report, every citation, and every field interview card Miller had ever filed. By Friday night, the conference table in Raymond's office was covered in stacks of paper. The air was thick with the smell of takeout food and exhaustion. But Raymond's eyes were bright with discovery. "Look at this," Raymond said, sliding a graph across the table to Harper. "What am I looking at?" "This is a frequency chart of Miller's drug arrests versus the average for his precinct," Raymond explained. "The average officer in that district cites odor of marijuana as probable cause in about 15% of vehicle searches. Miller." Harper looked at the red bar spiking off the chart. 62%. "Exactly," Raymond said. "He smells weed in 2 out of every 3 cars he stops. He has the nose of a bloodhound, or he's a liar." "But here's the kicker," Raymond continued, pulling another sheet. "Look at the conviction rate. Of those 62% of searches, how many actually yielded narcotics?" Harper read the number. 4%. "He's batting almost 0, Raymond said. "He uses the smell to search. He tosses the car. He finds nothing. He writes a ticket for a broken tail light or disorderly conduct to cover his tracks, and he lets them go. It's harassment, pure and simple. He's fishing." "This is statistical proof," Harper said, rubbing her temples. "But statistics don't convince juries, Raymond, and they definitely don't convince police boards. Hayes will just say Miller is proactive and vigilant. We need a face. We need a victim." Raymond nodded. He reached for a specific file folder he had set aside. It was thinner than the others. "I think I found him," Raymond said. He opened the folder. Inside was a mugshot of a young man, barely 20, with terror in his eyes. "Johnny Evans," Raymond read. 19 years old at the time, an engineering student at IIT on a full academic scholarship. No priors, no record. "What happened?" Harper asked. 2 years ago. Miller pulled him over on the south side, said he had a busted tail light. Then you guessed it, he smelled marijuana. Harper leaned in. "Did he find any?" "No," Raymond said grimly. "But here's where it gets dark. Johnny insisted he didn't smoke. He was an athlete, a track runner. He refused the search. Miller got aggressive. He cuffed Johnny, threw him in the back of the cruiser, and then found a small baggie of methamphetamine under the driver's seat of Johnny's car. Meth." Harper frowned. "That doesn't fit the pattern. Miller usually claims weed." "Exactly," Raymond said. "Johnny Evans swore up and down the drugs weren't his. He said Miller planted them because Johnny talked back. But it was his word against a cop's. Johnny couldn't afford a lawyer like Hayes. He took a plea deal to avoid jail time. Possession with intent to distribute. Jesus, Harper whispered. That's a felony. He lost his scholarship, Raymond said, his voice hard. He got kicked out of school. He's currently working as a night janitor at a warehouse, trying to pay off his court fees. His life was over before it started. If Miller planted evidence, Harper trailed off. He did, Raymond said. I checked the body cam logs for that night. There's a 3-minute gap in the footage right before the drugs were found. Miller claimed his camera malfunctioned due to a low battery, but the tech logs show the battery was at 84%. Harper stood up. That's it. That's the nail in the coffin. A pattern of fake probable cause is one thing. Planting evidence that's federal, that's a civil rights violation under color of law. I'm going to go see Johnny, Raymond said, grabbing his coat. It's 10:00 p.m., Harper noted. He works the night shift, Raymond said, and I don't think he's going to mind waking up if I tell him we're about to give him his life back. The warehouse was cold and smelled of industrial cleaner. Raymond found Johnny Evans pushing a mop bucket across the vast, empty concrete floor. Johnny looked older than his 21 years. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes dull. The spark of the engineering student was gone. Raymond walked up to him, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Johnny flinched, gripping the mop handle like a weapon. He saw the suit. He saw the way Raymond carried himself. I'm not doing anything wrong, Johnny said quickly, his voice trembling. Just working. Boss knows I'm here. I'm not here for your boss, Johnny, Raymond said softly. He pulled out his badge, not a flash this time, but a slow, deliberate presentation. I'm Agent Raymond Sterling, DHS. Johnny looked at the badge, then looked away. I'm on probation. Agent, I check in every week. I haven't done anything. I know you haven't, Raymond said. I know you didn't do anything 2 years ago, either. Johnny froze. He looked at Raymond, and for the first time, a flicker of hope, or maybe fear of hope, appeared in his eyes. What are you talking about? Officer Buck Miller. Raymond said the name. Johnny flinched as if he'd been struck. Don't say that name. He arrested me too, Raymond said. Tried to. Anyway, last Tuesday. Johnny let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, well, you're standing here in a suit, and I'm pushing a mop. Guess it worked out different for you. It did, Raymond admitted, because I had a camera, and I had a team. You didn't. Raymond stepped closer. Johnny, I have proof that Miller lied. I have proof he has a history of lying. And I found the logs that show he tampered with his camera the night he arrested you. Johnny dropped the mop. It clattered loudly on the concrete. You can prove he planted it. I can, Raymond said. But I need your help. I'm going to take this man down. Not just get him fired. I'm going to put him in prison. But I need you to testify. I need you to stand up and tell the world what he did to you. Johnny shook his head, backing away. No way. No way. Man, you don't know the CPD. They protect their own. If I talk, they'll find something else on me. They'll plant a gun next time. They can't touch you, Raymond said fiercely. You will be a federal witness. You will be under my protection. And when we're done, your conviction will be vacated. You'll get your record wiped. You can go back to school. Tears welled up in Johnny's eyes. He wiped them away with a dirty sleeve. I just wanted to be an engineer. You still can be, Raymond said. He extended a hand. Help me bury him, Johnny, for you, And for every other kid he's going to do this to if we don't stop him. Johnny looked at Raymond's hand. He looked at the mop bucket. He looked at the empty warehouse that had become his prison. Slowly, Johnny reached out and took Raymond's hand. His grip was weak at first. Then it tightened. "Okay," Johnny whispered. "Let's get the bastard." The following Tuesday, the disciplinary hearing for Officer Buck Miller began. It was supposed to be a closed-door formality. The union had arranged for it to be quick. Richard Hayes was there, wearing a three-piece suit, smiling confidently. Buck Miller sat next to him, looking bored, already planning his vacation with the back pay he expected to receive. Captain Reed sat at the head of the table, looking grim. "This hearing is called to order," the police board commissioner said. "We are here to discuss the incident on Wacker Drive." "Mr. Commissioner," Hayes interrupted immediately. "My client moves to dismiss all charges. The video evidence is circumstantial, and the federal agent in question provoked the encounter. Officer Miller acted within his discretion." "Denied," the commissioner said. "We will hear the testimony." "Fine," Hayes smirked. "Bring in Agent Sterling. Let's hear his sob story." The doors at the back of the room opened. Raymond Sterling walked in. But he wasn't alone. Walking beside him, wearing a fresh suit that Raymond had bought him that morning, was Johnny Evans, and behind them walked ASAC Harper, flanked by 2 attorneys from the Department of Justice. Hayes's smile faltered. He leaned over to Buck. "Who's the kid?" Buck squinted. He looked at Johnny. He didn't recognize him at first, to Buck. Johnny was just another face in a long line of victims. But then, Johnny looked him dead in the eye, and Buck remembered. The color drained from Buck's face so fast, it looked like he was about to faint. "Agent Sterling," the commissioner said. "Who is this?" "Mr. Commissioner," Raymond said, his voice ringing through the room. "This is not a disciplinary hearing anymore. This is a crime scene." Raymond placed a stack of files on the table. "We are not just charging Officer Miller with professional misconduct regarding my vehicle," Raymond announced. "We are charging him with federal civil rights violations, perjury, and felony fabrication of evidence." He put a hand on Johnny's shoulder. "And we brought the evidence with us." The silence in the hearing room was absolute. It was a sterile, windowless space with fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. At one end sat the 3 members of the Chicago Police Board. At the other, Buck Miller and his high-priced shark of a lawyer, Richard Hayes. And standing in the center, like an executioner in a bespoke suit, was Raymond Sterling. Beside him stood Johnny Evans, looking terrified but resolute. "Mr. Commissioner," Hayes said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is a disciplinary hearing regarding a parking violation and an impoundment. Agent Sterling is attempting to turn this into a circus by dragging in unrelated civilians." "Mr. Evans is not unrelated," Raymond said, his voice cutting through the air. "He is the pattern." The commissioner, a retired judge named Arthur Thorne, adjusted his glasses. He looked at the file Raymond had placed on the table. Then he looked at Buck. "Officer Miller, do you recognize this young man?" Buck stared at Johnny. He remembered the night 2 years ago. He remembered the fear in the kid's eyes. He remembered the easy arrest, the stats boost, the high fives back at the station. But mostly, he remembered how easy it was to make the problem go away. I arrest a lot of people," Buck stammered. "I don't recall every face." "Let me refresh your memory," Raymond said. He opened a laptop and connected it to the room's display. "November 14th, 2 years ago, 11:42 p.m., a traffic stop on South Halstead. You claimed a taillight was out. You claimed you smelled marijuana. You searched the vehicle. You found nothing. Objection, Hayes shouted. This is hearsay. My client's record on that arrest was cleared. Mr. Evans pleaded guilty. He pleaded guilty to avoid a 10-year sentence for a crime he didn't commit. Raymond shot back. Because Officer Miller told him, and I quote from the arrest report, "It's your word against mine." Kid, who do you think the judge is going to believe? Johnny flinched at the words. He remembered them vividly. That's standard police work, Hayes sneered. Building a rapport, encouraging a confession. Is planting methamphetamine standard police work? Raymond asked quietly. The room gasped. Even the stenographer stopped typing. Watch the screen, Raymond commanded. He played the body cam footage from that night. It showed Buck pulling Johnny over. It showed the aggressive questioning. Then, at 11:55 p.m., the video cut to black. Technical malfunction, Hayes said quickly. Battery failure. It happens. It does, Raymond agreed. But Officer Miller's body camera wasn't just off. It was muted. He manually disabled the audio recording before the video cut out, and then he turned it back on 3 minutes later, miraculously holding a bag of meth. So, Hayes challenged, you can't prove what happened in those 3 minutes, without audio or video. It's speculation. Raymond smiled. It was the same smile he had given Buck right before the tow truck lifted his Tahoe. Actually, Raymond said, we can... He tapped a key. Officer Miller's body camera is an Axon Body 3, Raymond explained to the room. It has a feature called sleep mode. When you turn it off, it doesn't actually stop recording immediately. It enters a low-power state where it continues to buffer audio for 2 minutes to prevent accidental loss of evidence. Buck's face went from pale to ghostly white. He gripped the edge of the table. He didn't know that, Raymond said. Most officers don't. But the data is there. We pulled the raw logs from the cloud server this morning. Raymond pressed play. The screen remained black, but the audio filled the room. It was muffled, likely because the camera was covered or pressed against a uniform, but the voices were unmistakable. Audio Buck. Damn kid, think you're smart. Think you can talk back to me. Sound of rustling. Buck. I don't need your permission to search. I got probable cause right here in my pocket. Sound of a plastic bag crinkling. Buck. There we go. Meth. That's a felony. College boy. Kiss that scholarship goodbye. The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the sound of a career dying. It was the sound of justice arriving late, but arriving nonetheless. Captain Reed, who had been sitting quietly in the back, stood up. His face was a mask of fury. He walked over to Buck Miller, who was now trembling uncontrollably. You piece of garbage, Reed whispered. Captain, Buck pleaded. It was just a way to get him off the street. He was a punk. He needed to learn respect. Respect, Reed roared, his voice echoing off the walls. You destroyed this boy's life for respect. Reed turned to the commissioner. I've heard enough. I want his badge. I want his gun. And I want him in cuffs. Seconded, the commissioner said, slamming his gavel down so hard it cracked the wood block. Officer Miller is terminated effective immediately. The board recommends criminal charges be filed by the district attorney. Richard Hayes began gathering his papers. We'll appeal this. This is entrapment. This is illegal surveillance. Sit down. Richard, Raymond said, or I'll add you to the conspiracy charge. Hayes sat down. Two uniformed officers who had worked alongside Buck for years stepped forward. They didn't look him in the eye. One of them pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Stand up, Buck," the officer said. Buck Miller stood up slowly. He looked at Raymond. He looked at Johnny. He looked at the empty chair where his career used to be. I was just doing my job," Buck whispered, the lie finally sounding hollow, even to his own ears. "No," Raymond said. "You were doing your job. Now, let the justice system do its job." As the cuffs clicked shut, Johnny Evans let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for 2 years. He looked at Raymond, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," Johnny mouthed. Raymond nodded. "Go finish that degree, Johnny. We'll take care of the rest." The fallout was swift and brutal. Buck Miller was charged with 3 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law, 2 counts of perjury, and 1 count of fabrication of evidence. The blue wall of silence crumbled the moment the audio tape was leaked to the press. No cop wanted to be associated with a guy who planted meth on college kids. Richard Hayes dropped him as a client, citing irreconcilable differences, which meant the check for his retainer bounced. Buck eventually pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence. He got 8 years in federal prison. Johnny Evans's conviction was vacated 2 weeks later. The Department of Homeland Security, at Raymond's urging, offered him a fully paid internship in their cybersecurity division while he finished his engineering degree. He took it. He was going to build systems that stopped bad guys, not systems that created them. As for Raymond Sterling, he stood on the corner of Wacker and Clark 1 month later. It was a Tuesday. The sun was shining. He checked his watch. 10 a.m. A black 2025 Chevy Tahoe pulled up to the curb. It was pristine. The dent from the tow truck was gone, the sensor array replaced, the paint gleaming like obsidian. Raymond opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. He adjusted the mirror. He looked at the spot where Officer Buck Miller had tried to ruin his day. He smiled. "Dispatch," Raymond said into his headset. "This is Agent Sterling. Mobile 1 is back in service. Copy that. Agent Sterling," the voice crackled back. "Good hunting." He put the Tahoe in drive and merged into traffic. Just another black SUV in a city full of them. But this one had a story. And somewhere in a federal penitentiary. Buck Miller was sitting in a cell, thinking about the one car he should have just let go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you handle a bully with a badge. Buck Miller thought he could use his authority as a weapon. But he forgot the first rule of the jungle: there's always a bigger predator. In this case, it was a Fed with a 4K camera and a receipt for every lie Miller ever told. This story isn't just about one bad cop getting caught. It's about the hundreds of victims like Johnny Evans who don't have a federal agent to step in and save them. It's a reminder that justice sometimes needs a little push, and sometimes that push comes in the form of a blacked-out Chevy Tahoe. If you enjoyed seeing karma get served cold, do me a huge favor, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next story. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Raymond's shoes? I read every comment. Until next time, stay safe, know your rights, and watch out for the tow trucks.